The Long Island Walmart trampling. On the morning of November 28, 2008, more than 2,000 people pressed together outside a Walmart in Long Island. The sky was still completely dark, and a thin frost clung to the carts lined up near the entrance. People stamped their feet to stay warm, shifting closer and closer until the entire front row was packed tight against the sliding glass doors. Inside, 34-year-old Dimitai Damour wiped condensation from the glass and tried to see the shape of the crowd more clearly. He wasn't used to managing Black Friday openings. He had been hired only weeks earlier, but he could already sense that something was wrong. Every few seconds, the metal frame rattled as people shoved forward. One coworker muttered that the doors wouldn't survive another push. Damour forced a nervous laugh, but his eyes stayed fixed on the shaking hinges. The final minute before 5 a.m. felt stretched and electric. People began chanting. Someone hammered on the glass with their fist. The front rows leaned forward like a single organism preparing to lunge. Damour raised his hands instinctively and shouted for the crowd to back up, but his voice dissolved into the noise. The digital clock clicked from 4:59 to 5, and instead of opening outward, the doors simply collapsed. The entire frame buckled inward, sending splinters of glass across the floor. The crowd surged through, spilling forward in a chaotic wave of bodies. Damour stumbled backward, lost his footing, and went down instantly under the rushing feet. People tripped over him. Others fell on top of those already on the ground. Shoes, carts, elbows, knees, everything blended into a frantic storm of motion. Some tried to stop, but the push from behind made stopping impossible. The wave carried everyone inward with blind force. Employees yelled for help, but the sound barely cut through the frenzy. When they finally managed to reach Damour, the movement around him had slowed, but the damage had already been done. He wasn't breathing, his chest didn't rise. The holiday rush had crushed him long before anyone could pull him free. For most shoppers, the day was just beginning. For Damour, it ended the moment the pressure of the crowd gave way to chaos. The Toys R Us shooting. In Palmdale, California, the brightly lit interior of a Toys R Us buzzed with excitement as families streamed in on Black Friday morning. Children tugged on sleeves, pointing at giant plush animals and colorful aisles piled high with boxes. A group of employees stood near the front, offering smiles and directions, trying to keep the energy positive. Amid the cheerful atmosphere, two men drifted through the aisles with a tension that made a few shoppers quietly move aside. Their carts clipped each other in a narrow section near the electronics shelves, and what began as a small argument quickly turned into something sharper. Their voices rose, bouncing unpleasantly off the bright walls and plastic packaging. A mother holding her daughter's hand guided her away. A teenage boy put down a game console and backed into another aisle. Most customers tried to pretend nothing was happening, but the energy around the two men felt heavy. They moved deeper into the store, still arguing. One man stepped closer, the other hissed something back. A few shoppers paused at the end of the aisle, uncertain whether to call for help. Then the first man reached into his jacket. A father whispered, "Get behind me," to his son. A woman gasped and dropped a box of Legos. The music overhead kept playing cheerful holiday melodies, completely out of sync with the fear rising in the aisle. The first gunshot cracked, sharp and violent. Screams broke out. People ran in every direction, abandoning carts, grabbing their children, diving behind shelves. Another shot echoed through the store, then another. When the noise finally stopped, both men were on the ground. One slumped against a shelf of dolls, the other sprawled across a scatter of fallen toys. Police entered moments later, stepping around overturned boxes and abandoned carts. The store, once lively with excitement, now felt frozen in a suspended moment of terror. Outside, families huddled together, some crying, all stunned that a routine holiday shopping trip had turned into something they'd remember for the rest of their lives. The Target Stampede collapse. In South Charleston, West Virginia, the crowd outside Target grew thicker as dawn approached. People clutched coffee cups, stretched their legs, and checked their phones repeatedly. A 61-year-old man stood near the middle of the line with his wife, joking softly about beating the rush and making it home before breakfast. He had no idea the line behind him had tightened so much that the people near the entrance could barely move. When the doors opened, the tension released like a slingshot. Hundreds surged forward. The man felt the pressure from behind before he took a single step. Someone bumped his shoulder. Another pushed into his back. He stumbled, losing balance, and the next shove sent him to the floor. His wife tried to grab him, but the force of the crowd swept her forward. She screamed his name, but her voice disappeared into the roar of the rush. On the floor, he tried to roll onto his side, but the weight of people pressing past pinned him in place. A knee struck his ribs. A foot pressed against his shoulder. Someone tripped over him and fell before being pushed forward again. He gasped, feeling sharp pain spread across his chest. His vision flickered with each shallow breath. His heartbeat became irregular. The panic around him blurred into distant noise. He tried once more to push himself up, but the pressure only grew heavier. An employee finally spotted him lying motionless on the ground and shouted for help. Workers formed a shield around him, forcing people back. Paramedics rushed in, performing CPR as his wife reached his side. She kept calling his name, her hands shaking uncontrollably. They transported him to the hospital, but the trauma had already triggered catastrophic heart failure. He died shortly after arrival, leaving behind a wife who had watched him vanish into the press of bodies. The Reno parking lot killing. In Reno, Nevada, the Walmart parking lot glowed under rows of harsh floodlights. Cars honked. People shouted directions at each other. Shopping carts clattered across the asphalt. The familiar chaos of Black Friday made tempers short and impatience thickened the air. Two men, both circling for a space, spotted the same opening at the same time. Each accelerated. Each believed he had the rightful claim. Their cars stopped inches from each other. The drivers exchanged glares, then words, then insults as they stepped out of their vehicles. Shoppers slowed down as the argument escalated. One man jabbed a finger at the other's chest. The other shoved him backward. A woman pushing a cart steered her children away. A man carrying a box muttered, "Not worth it," and hurried past. Voices rose, arms swung. Someone yelled for them to calm down, but the moment snapped. One man reached under his coat. The other froze in place. A single gunshot echoed across the parking lot. The victim staggered, clutching his chest, and slid down the bumper of a nearby car. Shoppers dropped behind vehicles or ran back toward the entrance. The shooter backed away, mumbling something about being threatened. Police arrived within minutes and detained him. Paramedics tried to revive the victim on the cold asphalt, but he never regained consciousness. The parking spot remained empty long after the tape went up around the scene, a small reminder of how quickly a minor conflict can turn deadly on a day fueled by pressure and impatience. The River Chase Galleria misidentification. At the River Chase Galleria in Hoover, Alabama, the parking deck was almost as crowded as the mall itself. Cars honked as they circled. People carried armfuls of shopping bags while trying to remember where they parked. Laughter and chatter echoed between the concrete pillars. Two young men got into an argument near a set of parked vehicles. Witnesses later said it escalated fast, with both raising their voices and pacing in agitation. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out. Panic erupted instantly. People screamed, ducked, and ran for cover. Another shot echoed deep into the structure. Officers sprinted into the deck, trying to locate the shooter. At the same time, a 21-year-old man who had been shopping with friends ran in the opposite direction, trying to escape the chaos. He wasn't involved. He wasn't armed. He just wanted to get away. An officer spotted him sprinting and, in the confusion, believed he matched the shooter's description. Commands were shouted, but the young man, terrified, kept running. One shot followed. He dropped to the concrete and slid to a stop near a parked car. Officers rushed to him, but within seconds they realized the terrible mistake. The actual shooter had already escaped in the opposite direction. Shoppers emerging from hiding later walked past a silver emergency blanket covering the young man's body. What should have been a day of discounts turned into a tragedy born from panic and misidentification. The Belmont fatigue crash. Around 3 o'clock in the morning in Belmont, North Carolina, the streets were almost empty. The Black Friday rush had finally calmed, and most shoppers were already home, sorting through bags and boxes after hours spent in crowded stores. A 17-year-old high school student was driving back from a long night of shopping with friends. They had moved from store to store, chasing deals, laughing at the chaos, and feeling the exhaustion build slowly behind their eyes. By the time he dropped off the last of his friends, he had been awake for nearly 20 hours. The highway leading toward his neighborhood was dark and quiet. He turned up the radio to stay awake, rolled down the window for cold air, and tightened his grip on the steering wheel. For a few minutes, it worked. Then the fatigue he had been fighting all night finally settled over him with a heavy, irresistible weight. His eyelids drooped. The lines on the road began to blur. He blinked hard, trying to stay alert. A moment later, he drifted over the center line. His car veered off the road, crossed a patch of grass, and slammed head-on into a concrete bridge pillar. The impact crushed the front of the vehicle and ignited a fire that spread rapidly through the engine compartment. Passing drivers saw the flames and called for help, but the heat and force of the crash made it impossible to reach him in time. By the time emergency crews arrived, the teenager had already died inside the burning vehicle. What had begun as a night of excitement and holiday tradition ended in a tragedy caused by exhaustion and a brief moment of lost control.